Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do for this playlist is read Romeo and Juliet. I have a graphic novel version of this that we are going to be using primarily. So hopefully, if you're not super excited about reading a 400-year-old Shakespearean text, that helps you feel a little bit better about it. It is illustrated and the language has been updated. So, and that will work just fine for the purposes of what we're going to do. One thing to know about this learning playlist is that you are going to be assessed over two different learning targets. The first one should look very familiar to you because we did this first semester. But what I'm measuring here is you analyzing how a theme or central idea develops over the course of the text. So just like before, you're going to decide what is the theme of this text, and you're going to give me some evidence, some quoted evidence from the text to support whatever you say the theme is. Now, I came up with a little bit different strategy that I think is a little simpler for determining what the theme is. So the primary conflict of the text is the first thing you need to decide. What is the biggest conflict going on here? What against what? Who against who? Who against what? Whatever you feel like the biggest conflict is in the text, and it should be pretty apparent to you pretty quickly. In fact, I would say almost everybody knows the story of Romeo and Juliet, even if they haven't read it yet. So you maybe have an idea before you even start reading. But as soon as you have an idea of what the biggest conflict is in the text, as soon as you know how it's resolved, and long before you know how it's resolved, you can come up with the theme, or at least an idea. So here's how we're going to define the theme here. What lesson does this conflict and or its resolution teach about life and the human experience? This is the theme. Okay, so what's the biggest conflict and what lesson can we learn from that conflict? And as you're reading, you're collecting, this part should look very familiar, your evidence quotes right here. And then for each one, you're analyzing how the quote supports the theme. So that's the first thing you're being assessed over, just like the end of last semester. So you've had some practice with it. So hopefully you can demonstrate how to do that again with a new text. The second thing I'm assessing you over is that you can use direct quotes and paraphrases from other writers in your own writing. So everything you collect here, you are then going to use to write what I call a TICA paragraph. Okay? And this is a notes page that you will get. As it says here in the playlist, the first thing you need to get is the copy of Romeo and Juliet. And in Google Classroom, you need to open up the Determining Theme Tracking Evidence doc. And it says that you need to grab these notes from me. Actually, that gets into the second part. So one thing to know is that this is your first assessment. You turn that in when you're done, boom, that's your first assessment. And it tells you right here what to do if you want to get a 5 out of 5, shoot for a 5 out of 5. The enrichment activity is listed separately in Google Classroom. So once you're done with that, that's one assessment score in the gradebook for you. Then you ask for these notes, which look like this. Okay, this explains what TICA is. It's basically a structure to help you write a good solid paragraph using quoted evidence. And then I give an example of that in the notes. And then I give you all these tips for how to properly basically put quotes in your own writing. So you get that. You study those notes, you ask me questions about them, and that's a paper copy so you can write on it and whatever you need to do to make sense of it. And then in Google Classroom, your assessment is listed here for 1.7. And it does include some practice. So do the little practice exercise up here. Ask me if you want some feedback on that. And then you're building your own paragraphs here using what you came up with here. So you're using one assessment to do the other assessment. And then at the bottom here, this is kind of testing you over what you learned in the notes page that I gave you, and you can use your notes on the assessment. And then just like before, if you want to shoot for a 5 out of a 5, that's a separate enrichment activity in Google Classroom. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing for this playlist.